Welcome to outer space, people of my channel. I am going to be talking to you today in a different way, and I'm going to talk to you about Star Trek. That is something I am super passionate about. As you can see, I love all things Star Trek. I have been watching it since, birth, really. I was born the same year as Next Generation, so it's kind of kind of planned, or predestined. Anyway, I thought we would talk about some Star Trek shows, and I will give you my thoughts on them. This is going to kind of be a little series of them in sort of the way that Trek culture does their ups and downs. I'm, of course, not going to break down every single episode. I do not have any fancy background. This is just one of the walls of my house. I don't have, people doing editing. This is me on my camera. It's what you get. Uh, anyway, I want to talk to you about probably each series. And the first one I'm actually going to start with is the next one that's coming out, which is Starfleet Academy. I wanted to start with that one just because it's the one that is the newest. It's one that's going to happen. We don't know a lot yet, but I am coming at this from, obviously, I've been a Trekkie since the old days of Kirk and Spock and all of them. And yes, I'm going to say the real ones of Shatner and Nimoy, not the 2009 movies, but that's another topic. Anyway, Academy. I both love and hate this idea. I love it because of, first of all, just that there is Star Trek at all. I love that we have another show coming up. There's going to be new ships to look at, new weapons and merchandise and uniforms and gadgets and all the stuff. So that's really cool because I always like seeing new stuff. This also keeps the conversation going. If you have no Star Trek, then there is no you can't really have new conversations about stuff. It's all going to be rehashing, and it's who's better, Kirk or Picard? Well, now let's talk about what different stuff, where's Star Trek going, all this. So I love that there's a new Trek. I also love that it's set at an academy. I think this is a great idea. There have been ideas of a Star Trek Academy show, really ever since even back when Next Generation, when the original series was wrapping up. I think that this has been floating around somewhere out there in the universe that they would do this. And I think it's a good idea. I think it would be interesting to see cadets go from, their training to being in the ship and then to maybe being in command of one or at least being on the crew. What is also good, I would say, is we get to have new adventures and we get to bring back some characters we've heard of before. There is, of course, going to be apparently some kind of talk about Cisco, what happened with him. And then, of course, everybody loves Robert Picardo. EMH is back as EMH. That's really cool. Anytime I think you bring somebody back. But I don't know, how big of a role does he have? Is it like, hey, look, there's the doc, and that's it? Or is he a main character? What's his role? Anyway, so that's what I like. I like that there's an academy. I like there's Star Trek at all. That's cool. What I don't like about it is when they set the show. I feel that this was, it's obviously a spinoff from Discovery, because after the events of Discovery, now we can open the Academy back up and all this. I like that idea in that, we got the Academy back, but the Academy, I don't relate to it. This is so far out in the future, I don't know if I care about these people. With the other shows, like, say, Enterprise, I really enjoyed it being set in the 2160s because I can think about, well, I won't be there, but, maybe my great-grandson could serve on the Enterprise. That's really cool, to think about there would be a descendant of mine there. In the 32nd century, I have a hard time picturing that. It's so far out there. And it's kind of like, well, why do we care about the events that these people are going through? I care about what I could see my descendants getting into, in X-01, Kirk era, all that. So it's a little bit of a departure. I also feel like it's kind of doing a disservice. There's always been a lot of stuff with the Academy where we saw Wesley and Nog. There was a Starfleet Academy game that was awesome. I at least think so. Back in the '90s, that was set during like the motion picture era, or like Wrath of Khan. The Monster Maroon, whatever year that was. So I feel like that's kind of where the Academy was in our minds. I would have liked to have seen something too where if we are at the academy, maybe, a guest lecturer sometime could be Tom Paris or, somebody we know. That would be really cool because then you get, a legacy character, but it doesn't become about them. It's just, oh, there's one episode, this person we know is in it. How cool is that? And you kind of move on. I like guest stars. I don't like when they kind of shoehorn in somebody. That was kind of one of my problems with Seven of Nine being in Picard. I love her character. She had some stuff to do in Picard, but it was kind of like, let's make the Seven of Nine show again, which I already told Voyager was in the last couple seasons. So, I don't want this to become, the EMH show. I want it to be its own thing. And I don't know, it just kind of would have made more sense, I think, to put it back in an era we're familiar with, too. Because, I care about, well, what about the people that served with Nog and Wesley or whomever, people we knew? Like, make it in a relatable time. The other thing I want to say, I love and hate some of the tech we have. The comm badge, I know this isn't a comm badge, but, you stay with me. That I like that has become a personal transporter. That is super cool to me. That shows a leap in technology, and it also makes sense because we've seen in like Nemesis where there's a little transporter enhancer. There's been other episodes where they have something that's just on their body that works with the transporter. So it kind of makes sense that eventually you would have a personal device that you could do that with. And how great would that be to be able to not, Scotty, get me out of here, beam me up. You just go, boom, you're back on the ship. Boom, you're in engineering because there's something going on. Boom, you're on the planet. That would be cool. So I like that aspect. Some of the stuff I don't is like the ship. It's pretty, yes, because like with the feathery things and it's curved, it's got this down part, it's a cool looking ship, I will agree. I don't know that it makes sense. I kind of have a problem with all of these the nacelles being detached, like that whole thing. It looks cool, yes. And okay, our tech has evolved to where we can use tractor beams or something to move the nacelle around the ship. Maybe that's better for warp field. Okay, I can buy that. I feel a little though it's coolness for coolness sake. And sometimes you can do that, but I would like there to be good reasons. So again, you've got part of the ship that's not attached to each other, and I feel like that would mean, what if I'm at the front part of the saucer that's in the middle, and I want to get to the front part over here? I have to beam from here to here? I know by this time, a transporter is much like walking through a door. It's, everyone has it, it's used all the time. But just like, why? Why do that? That it's like, instead of having a door into your kitchen, you added a long tunnel. Like, it still gets you there, but like, why make it that way? Why not just have a whole ship? I also wonder, and this is kind of a bigger thing with Star Trek in the 32nd century, I feel like we should have progressed more. Like, you can only make phasers so small, ships so fast, and all of this, to where do you go from here? I think you need to have created some new way of doing things. I would say it would make more sense to have like a Stargate system or something. You don't have ships anymore, you just go from planet to planet. Yes, that, shoots yourself in the foot because Star Trek is usually half about the ships, and, the Enterprise is always like a main character. So I could see the Athena being an important thing, and everyone's a model of it, I get why they're ships. But the 32nd century is so far out there, would we not have done something else? Or, do we still have warp drives? Why wouldn't we have, like, something else? Why wouldn't we have more like the Borg transwarp conduit that we can use? Or Slipstream, or something that is, it's still an engine that makes you go somewhere, there's some travel time, but it is so fast. And so instead of, I would say maybe instead of exploring the Milky Way, be like, well, we did that. This week we go to Andromeda. This week we go to another galaxy. That could be, some kind of an inter-galaxy drive of some kind. Something different. I also don't quite get, I would say, the uniforms. I do, I like them to a degree. They're certainly better than I think the Discovery ones. I think you have to have blue, gold, red. If it's Star Trek, you really should be doing that. Just the design of them, I don't know. It also looks too much like everything we've seen before. I know you can only design clothes so much, and yes, it looks a lot different than the stuff we saw in like TNG or anything like that. But it's just, shouldn't it look a little different? I don't know. It's also weird to think too that Starfleet even is still Starfleet. Why isn't it something else maybe? Because I think about how the United States used to be just land, then it was colonies, then it's states. Going to stay that way for a long time, I'm sure. But would it stay that way, 1,000 years from now? Same thing with the Federation. Would it still be the same kind of thing? I don't know. So there's nothing wrong with any of this inherently. It's just don't set it in the 32nd century because I feel like that's harder to explain why things are so much like they were back in like Voyager days. Now the cadets themselves, I don't know much about them. There hasn't been a ton revealed. I'm again gonna say I like and dislike. There are new species, and I forget the acronym, but there's SAM, who is some kind of a non-organic being. That's a great idea to have a data, like character, because you would have that, I would think, this far out. You should also have lots of non-humans. You should have more mixed breeds. You should have things we've never seen anything remotely like, but there should still be some humans and stuff. The one that I want to talk about is the first officer, the Thok, I think her last name is, but the Jem'Hadar woman. Cool idea in that we've never seen a Jem'Hadar woman. So, okay, this is interesting. Now, the problem though is we have that line of dialogue where it says there are no Jem'Hadar women from DS9. Could have changed by now because a lot of time has passed. They are, a genetically modified species and all this. Maybe they made a woman, okay, sure. And then they explain, well, she's half Klingon. Okay, so did a Jem'Hadar guy and a Klingon woman have a child? Maybe, like, this is something you have to now explain, I feel like. Whereas other people, with B'Elanna, half human, half Klingon, you don't have to explain anything. Yeah, she had mixed breed parents. We've established that's a thing in Star Trek. And nobody ever said Klingons couldn't have children with another race, or at all, or there weren't Klingon women. Like, we knew all this. So you have to now explain your character. That seems problematic. But I do like that we're seeing different races. It's interesting that the bad guy is half Klingon, half Tellarite, I believe. Interesting that that would happen. Doesn't seem likely to me, knowing their races. I don't know. Obviously, the 32nd century Tellarites and Klingons are different than the ones we know, but I don't know. It just seems kind of odd to me. I'll have to wait and see, I guess. Another thing I want to point out, first of all, just the sets. They look cool, yes. They look very Star Trek-y from, stuff we've seen. The problem is, if I wasn't watching the shows, and you showed me a picture of the bridge of the Stargazer from Picard, the Athena from Academy, and then the Enterprise from Strange New Worlds, and you're like, what eras are these ships in? Are they different or what? I would say they look like they're from the same era. They are all the same looking. Now they look different from each other. Since I do look at a lot of media, I can tell. But just an average Joe going, oh, what Star Trek is this? Because I think really if you find a Star Trek show just on, you should be like, oh, that's Voyager. Oh, that's original series. Oh, that's DS9. Whatever. And with this, I feel like it's all too similar. Now that's fine when you're talking Next Gen DS9 Voyager. Those did happen in the same time period. So, 1701D, the Voyager, and the Defiant could have all met up. That's possible. They all existed within the time frame. The Strange New Worlds Enterprise, the Stargazer from Picard and the Athena cannot meet each other because they are way different time periods. But they all look the same. So I don't think we should have said it in the 32nd century. I don't like that idea. I think we should have made it at least a little closer. Why not put it in like just after Voyager or a time period we know? You know. Let's see. But I am glad Star Trek is coming back. I've had though like a love hate relationship with Star Trek as of late. I loved Star Trek as a kid, but stuff now I'm like, I don't know how much I like this or not. I'm not a big fan of Discovery, but I do like Strange New Worlds. So, it depends what they do with it, if it's good or not. Anyway, those are my thoughts for now. I am going to sign off, and we will see you next time.